Hey,
Welcome back to Is It Crazy or Is It God,
hey, we're
guys?
live again.
We're
What's
doing
going
this
on?
live. This is fun.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not like anybody's leaving any comments or anything, but if
No.
that were the case, we will be able to see it
Okay.
here. But okay, and one day we will have people who leave comments live, and they're
Yeah.
going to be like, "We read that last week too, and this is what we think."
Yes.
So anyway, welcome back to Is It Crazy or Is
Welcome
It
back.
God?
Yes, I'm
Um,
excited.
where we are just aiming to encourage Bible readers
Mhm.
everywhere. Just pick up your Bible and read with us because
Mhm.
this is our first time reading the Bible all the way through.
Yeah.
We started last January and it's now the second January,
Yeah.
and it's probably going to take us just under 2 years, I think, to finish it. But we're
Mhm.
reading for an understanding, not just to get through it. It's like first we were like, we just want to get through it, and then we started reading it. It's like, yeah, well, it was before we started reading it. We decided
Mhm.
that, but you definitely need to take your time and read it
Yeah.
for understanding. So anyway, well, we're back. Another week has
Yes.
passed, and
How was your week?
oh, got me first, guys. My week was good.
Mhm.
I showed up for myself this week. I was working on my discipline. I'm right there on the cusp, guys. I'm right there on the cusp. I wanted to work out, I think, 4 times this week, and I only did two. But that's two more than I did the week before that. Of course, Buttercup wants to be somewhere around here. There she is. Okay, so I'm gonna go and make sure our audio is crispy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but first off, finish talking about this.
Mhm.
I had a good week. I really tried hard. And I'm noticing now what my sort of pain points are and like what I need to work on.
Mhm.
Like I need to put the magnifying glass on because I think what happens is before you do it or before you know what to expect,
Yeah.
you just assume that either it's going to be really hard and you shouldn't try, or this is about anything, by the way, but this for me, it's about waking up in the morning and working out.
Mhm.
It seems like it's either going to be really hard, so I don't want to try today, or it's easier than you think. So the 2 days that I did do it, it was easier than I thought, but I think I got defeated those other couple of days that I was going to go, but that's okay because it's progress over the week before,
Mhm.
and I had a pretty decent week overall. I think I just need to, put the pedal to the metal, my friend. So I'm gonna go check the audio. You
And then
tell
I
me.
was about, yeah, I got
Okay.
you about my week. Okay. What's up, guys? So my week went pretty good. I I actually showed up 4 days. I worked out 4 days last week. I woke up early in the morning. Um, I have this thing where I don't look at my phone or the internet or TV. I just connect with God early in the morning. I do my affirmations. I, you know, work out. If there's no TV on, and I read the Bible with faith, and then I read. We're reading another book right now. I joined this entrepreneurship club called the Morning Meetup. So I've been showing up, and they have us reading this book. So it's called this right here, Outwitting the Devil. So it's pretty good. I've caught up, and I'm doing good. I love it. That time in the morning when it's just you and God, is so creative, and it's necessary, and I suggest everybody should do it. Everybody should meditate, pray, um, drink water. You know,
Say your
say
affirmations.
your affirmations.
Okay,
Do
so
it.
let's see. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah.
I just messaged you from in there. It sounds good.
Okay.
Um, we had an issue last week with our audio, like
It
so.
happens.
It's our first time going live, and we just, whatever.
Hmm.
So just talking about the morning routines, right?
Hmm.
Like there's literally 30 things that I could be doing in the morning, but I've kind of dwindled it down to like the necessary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And not everything I have listed in my morning routine is necessary,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like something I could be doing if I forget. Right, like I have one there. One thing I never do is like unload the dishwasher. I don't do that. We don't do that till later in the day typically.
Mm-hmm.
But like that's something that could be a good thing to do. First thing I have to do, I've recognized now, is like I have to go wash my face
Mm-hmm.
first thing, or else it's like most of the time, because I have to expect this, then it's going to be like a fight in my mind, like, well, oh, you're so close to going back to sleep. But once I wash my face and I feel like, oh, I'm refreshed, right? It's like I'm woke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's
Yeah.
one thing that I have to do in the morning. But like we do this miracle morning called Savers, or because it's from the book called Miracle Morning
Mm-hmm.
by Hal Elrod.
Mm-hmm.
We read that book maybe like 4 years ago. And maybe before that was before we got married. We read Miracle Morning. I think. I know I read
Maybe,
it.
yeah.
I think so, because I think it was talking about, that was when I first got you into bullet journaling.
Yeah.
So I think that was like
Vision boards and stuff like that.
2014, 2015. So anyway, long story here, but basically the morning miracle says you should do this thing called Savers: silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribe, which is writing, right? And those are 6 things that successful people do typically. So this guy basically just interviewed a bunch of people, kind of like Think and Grow Rich, right? Kind of like that, but it's just modern day. Hal Elrod just basically captured a bunch of morning habits of successful people, and he put them together, and he kind of said like those 6 things, Savers, is the thing that everybody who's successful basically has in common.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all good things.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
So your week was good. I was hearing about it when I was checking the audio in the other room. So good. I'm glad. All right. So this week, guys, we read. All right. Look, this was not. I won't say it wasn't that exciting, but it wasn't like one of those action-packed parts of the Bible. It was part of it was very exciting, but part of it wasn't necessarily like a, really like edge of your seat. But we're glad to read all of it. So wait a minute, it was the 23rd. Right. Okay, we did Psalm 6, 8 through 10, 14, 16, 19, and 21. Then we did Chronicles 1 and 2, and that was basically lineage. And so Chronicles 1 through, I want to say 4, is basically just lineage with a couple of details along the way. So then we did Psalms 43 through 45, 49, 84 through 85, and 87, and then First Chronicles 3 through 5. So basically we read Chronicles 1 through 5, like you said, and all those Psalms that I just named. I don't necessarily know the reason why they did that way, other than to just recap, right? So I'm talking about mixing in the Psalms with those Chronicles. Like I completely understood why we were reading those Psalms with First Samuel, because this is what was happening to David at the time, and he wrote the Psalms that we read while we were reading. This part of our, we're reading from the TeachSundaySchool.com's 365 daily Bible reading plan. And like we said, we're just taking it at our own pace. But I didn't necessarily get it. It's probably going to come together later, like as we keep reading. But overall, we're going to get into the nitty gritty. But it's like, I think I don't know if the Psalms that we read, who wrote them. But we kind of just we did that recap right in the middle and at the end of who was whose father, right? It's just like this person had this person with these kids. These kids that were the product of these 2 parents. You know what I'm saying? It just went down, down, and down. And that happened earlier in the Bible. Was it Numbers? I don't remember.
I think it was Numbers.
It might have been before that. It might have been like
Leviticus,
Genesis.
maybe.
I feel like Genesis or Leviticus also does that. And I have
Mhm.
to imagine they're going to keep doing that every now and again,
Yeah,
right? Just reminding you, like, now keep in mind, these are
yeah.
the offspring of
These
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 people,
people. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, yeah, overall, okay, so that's what we did. So then you go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's cool. So the songs of reflections. You ready for the question?
Oh, we jumping right in. Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah. How can we use some of these verses in our anxious lives? Ooh,
Okay, so they're
let me
specifically
see.
talking about what? The first Psalms are
Psalms.
listed?
Yep, yep. Let me see, because that is
Psalm 6, 8
interesting.
through 10. Where's
Yeah.
my Bible? Right here.
Let me see.
Okay, well,
What did I highlight?
this is the thing about going live too, because typically this is a part that I would cut out while I'm looking for my answer. Especially this is so specific. What would I use for anxiety? I'll say this before I get to that is that I have been using my memory verse keeping and
Mm-hmm.
like my gratitude entries in the morning. I have been like getting to the root of my anxiety through reading the Bible and through some of the verses that we haven't even gone over yet, right? Like some of them are from like Ephesians, some of them are from Mark, some of them are from Proverbs. Like I'll just whatever I'm going through, I'll just, look for answers through Bible verses and then I'll be like, "Oh yeah, this is what I need." And I'll read the whole chapter and then I'll read or I'll read the whole verse and then I'll read just to see like what's happening, like the context,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll just write it over and over, and that does help my anxiety. But as far as these are concerned, did
Mm-hmm.
you know already?
Um.
Psalm 6. I have one highlighted, but that's not written
Yeah, I
down.
have a couple highlighted.
Okay.
I'll go with Psalms 8, verse 5 through 8. It says, "Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings, and crowned him with glory and honor. You have given him dominion of the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all the sheep, all the oxen, all the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea." To me, this is basically saying that God has given, He's created us in His image, and just don't worry about everything that's going on around you because God has created everything, and He has you have glory and honor of who you are. You know, having anxiety is kind of like not trusting in God because it's I'm starting to learn it's a natural thing, but it could be handled because it's all about your thought process and patterns. We're getting massive negative thoughts and self
Mm-hmm.
negative talk uh, daily,
Mm-hmm.
but when you believe in God, all that goes away because you got to be able to trust Him. And here's the thing: trusting is hard. Giving up control, because as humans, we think we have control and we don't.
Right.
We can't even figure out time. We we can't even they're first starting now to create creatures from nothing, but we just figured that out. We've been on the earth for a long time, thousands of years. God's been had that plan already done. He can create atmospheres. You know what I'm saying? He can create whole planets. So I just think sometimes we just gotta give up. We gotta surrender. All right, you got anything you want to highlight?
I actually do. So, the theme of this was sort of like Thanksgiving, especially when we get to Psalms 8 and 9. And it was kind of like, "Oh, thank you for bringing me through." Now, one of the things that it says in Psalms 9 1,
Mm-hmm.
I will tell aloud all your wonders and marvelous deeds. And then Psalms 9:10, those who know your name, who have experienced your precious mercy, will put their confident trust in you. For you, O Lord, have not abandoned those who seek you. as far as anxiety is concerned, it's calming to know that like whatever you're going through has probably been experienced before, right? Like you're not the only one, and that God is with you. And so this is just a reminder that like, oh, by the way, like God has done wondrous things. So if you're going through something and it feels like it's the worst thing ever, it's probably not. And even if it feels that way, God is with you. And look at all of these examples of how he's proven that over time. So that's something that has specifically been helping my anxiety. Also, it's just like remembering that like, oh, this seems really hard, but first of all, is it real? That's one of the things that I've been really kind of doing to myself, is like we see these examples in the Bible of like this stuff that actually happened. A lot of times in my mind, I'll imagine what the worst could be. And then those thoughts are basically breeding more negative thoughts and more negative emotion because I'm living in a future that doesn't even exist, as opposed to like looking back and saying, oh, this is how God has been. You know what I'm saying? Look, like I will allow all your wonders and marvelous deeds. Like we've seen all of this stuff happen. You know what I'm saying? Water from a rock, bread out of nowhere. Like we've seen them come through the wilderness, and we're just getting really started with learning the whole story. So I think that's probably the answer. What does it say
That's
again?
it. How can we use some of these?
How can we use some of these verses to just basically see what God has done and see that you're not the only one who's gone through tough times? And this is how to do it. Right? So it's like, oh, you use these verses, you call on him in this way. So
that's it. All right. Now, this is what Faith was talking about earlier about the genealogy, right? And so the genealogy, it goes from Adam to Abraham. So this is First Chronicles 1-2. And it breaks down the 12 tribes of Israel, the names and the descendants of Judah. I'm not going to lie, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was just, it was a lot of names.
Names that we couldn't pronounce.
I could not pronounce any of them.
I could not pronounce
I was
most
struggling.
of them either.
All right, here's the question. I was struggling. Struggle bus James.
Oh my gosh.
All right, so this says genealogies can be boring. However, what does the inclusion of Adam tell you about his authenticity in history?
Oh my gosh. It says that. It says genealogies can seem boring.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you say that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I must have zoned that part out. However, what does the inclusion of Adam tell you about his authenticity in history? Why? Okay, so because they included Adam.
Maybe because he was the first man, he's always going to be included as number one.
Yeah, if you can take it from the top. You know what I'm saying?
Always going to be, his bloodline is the only bloodline. Adam and Eve bloodline is the bloodline that we all carry.
Yeah, and you know what's funny?
He's like
we don't necessarily have like a whole bunch of details about Adam.
Nah.
It's just like we know like what he did.
He did the craziest thing in history.
Yeah.
Well, Adam and Eve. Both of them. But we would be here without them. That's a crazy thing. That's a crazy thought. Because Adam committed the first sin and Eve, would we even be here? Because if they never ate the apple, who knows that we wouldn't have a world like this, because we wouldn't have... you think they ate from the tree of knowledge. It's a gift and a curse.
It's kind of like this. If they wouldn't have done that, they would have done something else. That's what I think. I know that's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
But it seems like to me that like it's just proof that man is flawed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they did that, and that actually ended up, making us the way we are. But
always trying to
I feel
God.
like, or even not believing, or believing you could hide something from him.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that
who told you were naked?
Right. The inclusion of him in the genealogy just lets us know that, like, okay, every sort of generation after Adam was just had a different take on the flaw.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just
It
a different take, a different take, a different
crazy
take.
to be Adam and Eve, because they said God was walking around in the garden.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Very interesting. All right. Now we read Psalms by Korah. No, Psalms by sons of Korah. I guess these were Psalms that were written. They were pretty interesting. So the question is, this is going to be an interesting. This is not quick, but
44.
Yeah,
43.
It's not going to be a quick one, guys. But it's just, I get it. It's a lot of, the Psalms were pretty. They were like short songs. So it says, pick one psalm and reflect how it can be applied to our nation today.
Oh my goodness. That is a heavy question. Pick one song. Okay, so first of all, Psalm 43.
Yeah.
I'm just starting out right here. It's a prayer for rescue. Okay, so
that's a good one.
That is a good one, but I'm not going to do that because that was just too easy.
I'm going to pick one.
There's Psalm 44. Yeah. Which I'm just making sure we're in the same. Yeah. I'm in the correct. Man, I almost want to go for Psalm 43, but it's Psalm 44 is a former times of help and present troubles, which is kind of like what I was saying about the anxiety, where you're just basically like, okay, I've gone through things before, and we know what happened, and we know you saved us. So if I could just remember that now, then I should be good, and I could go through whatever I need to go through, just knowing that on the other side of this, it's going to be okay. But one song reflect on how it applies to our nation today. So I'm celebrating the king's marriage. I want to pick a really good one. That was 45, and then 49. I'm trying to see where I have the most highlights. The folly of trusting in riches is Psalm 49. And then 84, 85, 87. Man, I might have to go back to 43.
All right.
Do you have anything highlighted?
The most highlights.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like
I'll give it to between 84 and 85. One is my soul longs for the courts of the Lord, and the other one is revive us again. I'm going with revive us again.
Okay.
That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. And it's basically saying that it's about forgiveness. So like verse 2 says, you forgave the iniquity of your people. You've covered all their sin. You withdrew your wrath and you turned over from your hot anger. Restore us again, O God, from our salvations, and put your indignation towards us. Verse 10, steadfast love and faithfulness meet. Righteousness and peace kiss each other. Faithfulness springs up from the ground, and righteousness looks down from the sky. That's what I think it is, man, because I think right now it's a lot going on in our world, a lot of violence. I think this song kind of, is asking for forgiveness. And here's what the Study Bible says. It says, Psalms 85 is a community lament at a time when God has shown his displeasure over people's unfaithfulness, perhaps by withholding fruitfulness from the land. Do you see what's going on right now? This is just a prayer to God to forgive us. That's where I think we're at. I think that's what verse I'm going with.
Okay, I love it. I'm going back to 43 and 44. Because I looked at 85.
43 is a good one, yo.
I looked at 84 and 85, and I have a lot of highlights there, I was going to
pick
but I got to go
44.
All right, let me tell you a little bit from 43, and then I'm going to go into 44. So Psalm 43 in the Amplified version says it's the prayer for rescue. And the reason I would say that applies to today is because I know a lot of us feel like helpless to certain things that are happening. Like there's a whole war going on in Ukraine, and it seems like there's nothing I can do about it. You know what I'm saying? I
Mhm.
hate that that's happening to them. But it's like I live here and I don't know what to do to help them. They're still going to be going to war, right?
Mhm.
Or like the mass shootings or like the police brutality or you know, just certain things you just feel like, okay, what can I do? So sometimes I feel like, and I mean just even in my everyday life, sometimes I feel
Mhm.
like, oh man, I need to get out of this situation or I need to, you know, hurry up and get on the other side of this or that,
Mhm.
right? And so I have to start with 43 right at the end because it says, okay, first of all, right in the beginning, number 2. Psalm 43 2.
Mhm.
For you are the God of my strength, my stronghold, in whom I take refuge. Why have you rejected me? I thought that was interesting that that was in there because our lack of patience,
Mhm.
right, really makes us feel like God's not listening to me. How many times have you prayed for something and then you want it now? And
Mhm.
you're like, oh, where is it? Where is it? God's not listening. It's like God is listening, but sometimes I feel like I know this, I don't want to hear this, but I have to say it to myself. Sometimes I feel like it's the action that I have to take after I pray that I had to go through that thing in order to be, you know, what God wants me to be. Like, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? It's like basic training or something. Like, you can't get to be a soldier without going through basic training. And it's not that you just have to suffer, it's that we need the person who came out of basic training because they're likely the most qualified to be a soldier.
Yeah.
Right? It like when we talk about the Navy SEALs and stuff, it's like, yeah, some of that stuff is for initiation, but really, if you can't get through that, then you're probably going to be at a lack of experience
Mhm.
when it comes to being an actual Navy SEAL,
Mhm.
right? So, you know, it's a lot of things we're just like, oh, I just need to go through this so I can get this. But it's not really about getting, it's about becoming, right? So, anyway,
Mm.
there's that. The last part of it, so it's like, why have you rejected me? That was 43 2. 43 5 says, hope in God and and wait expectantly for Him. This is the end of the 5 verse. Hope in God and wait expectantly for Him, for I shall again praise Him. And the idea is that you still don't have what you're after, but like the thing in your hand, right? But you're just going to wait expectantly as if you do have it and you're going to praise him anyway,
Mhm.
right? Like that's a specific instruction. So I definitely think that applies to our nation today. But going to 44, and this is the last part of my answer. um it's down in 44 3. uh Our fathers did not possess the land by their own sword, nor did their own arm save them, but your right hand and your arm in the light of your presence, because you favored and delighted in them. And this one is called Former Times of Help in Present Troubles.
Mhm.
And it's really the idea that I was talking about with the last question, which is,
Mhm.
you know, you just feel like everything is crushing and you just feel like everything is not going well.
Mhm.
But like if you think about the last times that God hooked you up, right? It's like it's the same thing. It might not be the same exact situation, but you can expect the same like he keeps
Mhm.
doing it. But we keep forgetting.
Mhm.
I do this too. We talk about the Israelites, but like I literally do this all
Mhm.
the time. And every new challenge feels like a whole brand new issue.
Mhm.
But it's like, dude, you don't know this by now? So,
I think it's something that we're going to continuously struggle with. But the more that we're into the Bible and the more that we're studying and learning about Him and following His will, then I think the more that we surrender to Him. But you're going to always go back to that if you're not reading it. Because listen, in the Bible, it reminds you about the Israelites. Up to this point, we've heard it again. You know,
yeah. Yeah, of course we have. And we can see
it's still going to happen.
it's still going to happen. And I can see it in my life. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I mean, so it's wild how I can just like think like, oh my God, it's the same thing. And how certain things like are highlighted to me
Mhm.
once I have the information. But it's interesting because knowing this, okay, so because here's the thing. Before I knew these things, it just was hard by itself. But now knowing this, it's still the challenge of
Mm-hmm.
remembering it and utilizing it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really where your faith comes in, right? It's just believing in God, because it's like, okay, now I have the experience and the information through the experience I'm going through,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the word of God.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, how, let's mesh these two together,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's wild. Anyway, okay. Next question. Okay. Okay, so this is about First Chronicles 3 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
So it says again, and we're talking about the lineage and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What does a list of names mean? How do these lists vouch for the intentions of the writers? Okay, I have an answer for that. What would they like to prove about their own credibility? I'm thinking they're saying the writers with that question.
Mm-hmm.
What does a list of names mean? I can start with that. Do you want to start with that?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, a list of names just means like this is the order, right? Like this is how it happened. We're recapping here. I think the lists vouch for the intentions of the writers because they want to prove that this is accuracy, right? So like we told you the story, but now we're coming back and we're recapping and we're saying that these are all of the people who have lived so far and who their parents were and who their offspring was. And I think the intention is to be like, of the writer, is to say like, well, that we're accurate because we're recapping and it looks exactly the way that you read it in the first, right? Because I doubt that the same people wrote this.
Mm-mm.
Right? So they're just kind of like, okay, here's where
That
we
had
are
to be
now.
hundreds of years ago. This has to be hundreds of years in the future. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this is after Moses. This is
Mm-hmm.
after all those judges.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, this has to be hundreds of years. I mean, I should look up the map, but we're not doing that because we're live.
Mm-hmm.
So you look it up. You look up the map, guys. I mean the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we're at David now, and is the sentences. So basically, they went back through everything that happened
Mm-hmm.
before David, and we're about to start learning, I think, about Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
David's son Solomon. Um,
His son Solomon.
but what would they like
Wisest
to
man
prove about their
ever.
own credibility?
He's the wisest man ever to live. That's what they say.
So what would they like to prove about their credibility? Let me look at this.
I got an answer for that.
Yeah.
I think what they like to prove about their credibility as the accuracy because it's considered a historical document.
Mm.
So I think that they really wanted to focus on their credibility because they knew that this was going to be written down as a historical document. So the accuracy has to match up. So I think they took it very seriously.
And they kind of had these little snippets in there when they were, after they said this person was this person's son, these people were born from him. They would be like, they were given help against them, and this happened, and they cried out to God, and He granted them their, so it's just like they're telling who was born to who, but then they're also kind of recapping the story. So I think obviously it's written differently too, because as we were reading it, it was very much more detailed, and you can kind of tell, the difference between different people writing. I think you could tell the tone, and this is really a recap. It's like houses increased graces, so they need more land. It's like they're saying all of these things about the people, and then a little snippet here and there. So yeah, I think it just proves that. Also, something else that I picked up outside of credibility was just the idea that, like, some of these things came back up in my mind, like, oh, he was flawed. Oh, he was flawed, right? It was just like, oh yeah, I remember that happened to them. Oh yeah, I remember when they did that. Oh, I remember when that happened, right? And it's one of those things where you're thinking like, oh, nobody was perfect again, right? Like, oh yeah, they asked for this stuff, and I remember that. And it's kind of just recapping, but it's reminding you, like, oh, I'm seeing the pattern of how man goes through something, asks for help, and then gets the help, and then forgets and goes and sins again. And then, some people went back to God, some people didn't, but it's like it's the same pattern.
It's a constant loop.
It's the same pattern. So I don't know. And then the last, wow, this was like a kind of a quick episode.
Yeah, I think
I'm not mad at it.
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I think it was quick because of the genealogy.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you can't really like. I mean, those are nice questions, but like it's
cut and dry.
It's cut and dry.
And it's really nothing you can say about it.
Yeah, it's
you
not
know
a
what
story.
I mean?
It's not like David in the cave and then Saul's chasing him. And then,
it's a recap. We already talked about this stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
as you did Monday, pick a psalm and reflect how it applies to our nation today. So I guess the same one.
Oh, same one. Okay, so
let's
see. Between Psalm 73 and 77 through 78.
Okay, 73.
And how it applies to our nation today. That's a tricky way to word it, to be honest with you, because it's like, how does it apply in the way of like what's happening, or how could it apply if we were, all reading the Bible and putting it to action? Well, I guess, it applies because we're probably still doing the same thing, right? But okay, Psalm 73. Oh, I see. I got a lot of highlights here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
A lot of highlights for 78. 78 is the long one, though.
I got a lot of highlights in 73 because it's the end of the wicked contrasted with that of the righteous. Oh.
I didn't know 78 was a historical psalm. It just talks about
I got a lot in 77 and 78 too.
78's a lot.
God's guidance of his people in spite of their unfaithfulness. That's 78. That's the title of mine.
I was gonna pick that one.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm picking 78 because it's just about what you talked about. It's giving us a reminder of the great things God has done. And sometimes we forget. I know I forget. Like, oh man, look at this wonderful place we're in. You know what I'm saying? God put us here, right? So it's something that needs to be reminded and talked about. Because even though we're reading the Bible, sometimes we forget that God has done these awesome things for us. We just forget. And he's just sitting there like, oh, you've been doing this to me for all these generations. But I'll remind you. And then once he reminds us, we're like, oh, that's God, So I think 78 is a great one. It's called a historical psalm. And it's basically showing how it's going through what happened. And I think we have to be reminded of, we shouldn't live in the past or dwell in it, but sometimes it's okay, especially reading the Bible, to be reminded of God's works and his miracles. Mm-hmm. So you don't forget to look for him every day.
So good. And specifically, I had in 78, I had highlighted Psalm 78, verse 7.
That
they should place their confidence in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments.
Yeah, I got that joint highlighted.
So funny enough, I'm picking Psalm 73, which is called a wisdom psalm.
I was going to pick that one too.
And this is the end of the wicked contrasted with that of the righteous. And so a couple things stick out to me here. 73, 2. But as for me, my feet came close to stumbling. My steps had almost slipped. 73, 3. For I was envious of the arrogant as I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no pains in their death, excuse me. Their body is fat and pampered. They are not in trouble as other men, nor are they plagued like mankind. So it's basically like saying like, oh, whoa. What about him? It's kind of like the comparison thing, right? Wow. And people talk about that all the time on Instagram and other social media outlets where what does it say? Comparison is the
killer of joy.
The killer of joy. And you don't even know you're comparing yourself sometimes. I notice it's not until you start feeling bad and you realize like, oh, I've been comparing myself to that the whole time. It's not even like one person. It's like maybe it's a standard or maybe it's something that you see all the time. And then come to find out, especially on social media, it's not even what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? It's like you think this is all glorious or whatever, but like people are faking. And then a lot of times when people are, here's what I've noticed. If it's people's, like certain people just like are trying to put out a narrative, then that in itself is a little, it's like sort of shady, or not shady, but it's like it's in, I'm curious when people are trying to paint this picture, because it's like, well, is this what you do, right? Like, is this what you do all day? Is paint this picture? So to me, it's like when somebody, what do they say? Hurt people hurt people. Like when somebody's out there and they're angry, they're experiencing the most of that themselves. And you just really don't know. You really can't take people's word for it, I feel like, on what they're going through. All you could do is just focus on your own experience and your own walk. And so okay, ending this out, Psalm 73, this is the last part of Psalm 73, right before the verse ends. It's 73:28. It says, well, let me go back to 27, because 27 says, for behold, those who are far from you will perish. You have destroyed all those who are unfaithful and have abandoned you. And then 28 says, but as for me, it is good for me to draw near to God. I have made the Lord God my refuge and placed my trust in him, that I may tell of all your works. Which is so interesting, because when faced with like the question that sometimes like non-believers might pose of like, well, why do you believe in God or whatever, it's just like, not to be like, why don't you, but it's like, I'd rather just, it makes so much sense to me, right? Like everything that has worked for me in my life is attributed to what I'm learning here. Like, oh, that's why this works this way. That's why I'm seeing this over and over again as a pattern. And God has the most information. Why would I go off of my limited information when I have this whole book of instructions? Man, you know what I'm saying? And like, who else is offering something better? No one else. There's no other deal like this out there, guys. Like, you just, like, if you read God's word, you'll see the truth in it. And I'd just rather put my trust in God and be as close to him as possible. Because there's other things out there, right? But, safety. Okay, so I'm going to go into the whole thing. But like, you would want to be like, what, comfortable or safe. But safety is, in my opinion, is not a real thing. It's a perception. Yeah. Right? And if you're just going to be out there by yourself, like, why would you do that when you have the option to like follow God? So this joint hit me for sure. 28. But as for me, it's good for me to draw near to God. I've made the Lord God my refuge and place my trust in him, that I may tell of all your works. Like, yeah, that sums it up for me. So I would definitely apply that to the nation today, because with all of these other distractions and choices out there, it's like, for me, the most obvious choice is to just, go with God. So yeah, that's all we got for this week. Next week, we're going to be reading First Chronicles 6 through 10. And we're going to be reading Psalms 81, 88, 92, 93, and 102 through 104. Interesting. Okay. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Descendants of Levi. Yeah, Descendants of Levi. Yeah, but basically another genealogy. Yeah, okay. Sorry. I was like another. Yeah, but it's cool. Well, yeah, guys, we're excited. Yes. We're doing this live thing now, so my days of editing are over. No, no, but we're excited to do this live, and I think we're gonna continue to do this. And we're so thankful that you've joined us. If you're watching this on the replay, make sure you comment and like if you like this content, and subscribe. Yes. I just wanted to say that I'm really enjoying this. Even the parts that aren't so exciting, they're doing something for me. Having this information to draw back on. Sometimes it's really easy to talk negatively to myself, but so now I'm noticing that whenever I start to talk negatively to myself, a verse will pop up in my head, or
Mm-hmm.
like something. It won't even be like the verse verbatim. Like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
memorizing it like that, but it's just like, oh, but remember when this happened,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and they said this, God will uphold you with His righteous right hand, or whatever it is, right? And it's like some of these things are statements that have been repeated, and you can see through the stories that they're true. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely taking an overall positive impact on me from reading, because I'm able to like combat my negative self-talk.
Yeah.
It's getting easier to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you want to give any shout outs?
Yeah. The normal ones. I'm gonna shout out fourth quarter. Um
Hey,
listen,
fourth quarter guys.
it's a great thing. We just talk about sports from a fan perspective. I love it. We do live. We started going live every Wednesday. So I got some definitely plans for that. I want to shout out Yasum Unicorn, my wife's channel, those two sisters, my wife and
Misdemeanor Joe.
Misdemeanor Joe, my sister. Check out her page, Misdemeanor Joe too. She does this thing every Wednesday where she focuses on Black businesses, which is
Mhm.
awesome. And that's it. I'll shout out the other one when it's done.
Gotcha. All right. Well,
Almost though.
I have a
Almost.
shout out to obviously to Miss Demita Joe. Catch us over there. I think her Instagram handle is by Demita Joe. I have
Mhm.
everything in the description box. When
Mhm.
I don't think it's in the description box now that we're live, but if you're catching it on a replay, it'll be in the description box.
Mhm.
And then also my special shout out for this week goes to Crystal Evans Hurst. So I recently I don't let's say rediscovered. I mean, she's a person. She's been here the entire time. Okay. But I followed her page a long, long time ago. And I don't know what's going on with the algorithm because I haven't seen anything from her in a long time. Okay, YouTube. But um somehow something caught my attention the other day, or actually the beginning of the week, and I listened to it and it blessed me so much that I went looking for her more of her content, and she's been putting out content the entire time. I think I probably started following her. It had to be like at least a year or more ago.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting that I had lost connection with her content for that long, but whatever she put out it's really truly a blessing to hear from somebody who I feel I have so much in common with, and like to hear the perspectives. Sometimes, especially in a church community, or you can get caught up in people, or feeling like people are judging you, or feeling like you're not going to be churchy enough, for lack of a better term. But people like Crystal Evans Hurst remind me of like our church family. Like we go to United Baptist Church.
Yes.
And everybody there that I've encountered has always been like loving and kind and really like genuine.
Yeah.
And it's not like something of like, oh, like judgment or anything. And so, I understand that's not everybody's experience with their churches, but Crystal Evan Hurst reminded me of that aspect of like, oh yeah, church people can be fun and they can be open and honest and you can relate to them.
Mhm.
And they have the same issues and problems that we all have, that don't consider ourselves like, I guess, churchy or whatever. And I just love that from her. So definitely blessed by her content. I'll definitely leave her below and her info for her page and stuff like that, so that you can also see her content. So yeah, that's our shout out for the week. We want to give you a reminder to don't take our word for it. Go to the source.
Read the
your
Bible. All right, guys.
All right, peace, guys. See you next week.